Have you ever stood up for something you believed in, even when it was difficult? This is the story of Stephen, a man whose courage, faith, and truth still inspire people today. In the early days of the Christian Church, after the life and resurrection of Jesus, the number of believers was growing quickly. But with growth came challenges. There were disagreements among the people, especially about how widows were being cared for. So the apostles chose 7 men to help manage these responsibilities, men known for their good character and strong faith. One of those men was Stephen. Stephen wasn't just helpful, he was full of wisdom, grace, and power. He performed great wonders and signs among the people. Everywhere he went, he spoke about Jesus with boldness and clarity. But not everyone liked what Stephen was saying. Some religious leaders began to argue with him. They tried to debate him, but they couldn't match his wisdom or the Spirit guiding him. Frustrated, they decided to take a different approach. They secretly convinced some men to spread false accusations about Stephen. Soon, Stephen was arrested and brought before the high council. The room was tense. Important leaders gathered, watching him closely. False witnesses stood up and claimed that Stephen was speaking against their traditions and against God. Then the high priest asked him a direct question: "Are these accusations true?" Stephen didn't panic. He didn't stay silent. Instead, he began to speak calmly and confidently. He told the story of their people, from Abraham to Moses to King David. He reminded them of how God had always been faithful, and how, again and again, people had resisted him. Then Stephen said something bold, something that changed everything. He told them, "You are just like your ancestors. You resist God. You rejected the prophets. And now, you have rejected Jesus, the one God sent." The room exploded with anger. The leaders were furious. They covered their ears, shouting, unable to accept his words. But Stephen remained calm. In that moment, he looked up toward heaven, and what he saw gave him peace. Stephen said, "Look! I see heaven open, and the Son of Man standing at the right hand of God." That was the final straw. The crowd rushed at him. They dragged him out of the city, and there, in their anger, they began to stone him. As the stones struck him, Stephen did something extraordinary. He didn't curse them. He didn't fight back. Instead, he prayed. "Lord Jesus, receive my spirit," he said. And then, with his final breath, he said something even more powerful: "Lord, do not hold this sin against them." And with that, Stephen died. Stephen became the first Christian martyr, a person who gave his life for his faith. But his story doesn't end in sadness. It ends with meaning. Because Stephen showed us what true courage looks like. He showed us what it means to stand for truth, even when it's hard. And most importantly, he showed us the power of forgiveness, even in the face of pain. His story also had a ripple effect. Among those watching that day was a young man named Saul, who would later become Paul, one of the greatest messengers of the Christian faith. Stephen's life, and his death, became a turning point. So what can we learn from Stephen? Stand firm in what you believe. Speak truth with courage. And choose forgiveness, even when it feels impossible. Because sometimes, the greatest impact comes not from how long we live, but from how we live. Stephen's story reminds us that faith, courage, and love can shine, even in the darkest moments.